Our guest today is Chancellor Lee Roberts, and he has already endeared himself incredibly to us we just basically went through a whole Remember Those Guys on the 1980 Bluebonnet Bowl, Tar Heels against Texas, and Chancellor brought the program from that game with him, just happened to have it. So, I mean, Chancellor, I think we're basically done. Thanks for coming by.
Well, it's remarkable. You know, Coach Belichick found a bunch of these old programs just piled up in the football building. Wow. And I was over in his office looking at them and said, I'd love to see more of these. And he sent over a stack, including this one from the 1980 Bluebonnet Bowl. This is the team that beat Texas in the Astrodome in Houston, and I think only lost one other game that year to Oklahoma.
Well, we're right here on the cusp of football season. I do want to talk about athletics in a second. But also school has started. I have to, I mean, not that you're ever having days where you're just kicking back and relaxed, but I have to imagine this is a very busy time for you. When the kids are back, when school is starting up again, kind of what's going on in your life right now? What are some of the main focuses for you?
Hard to think of a more exciting time on campus than what we have going on right now. A lot of students back. This is actually the biggest freshman class we think we've ever had here at Carolina. 500 additional students. They're from 98 counties across North Carolina, 49 states, 80 countries. Wow. It's pretty exciting.
How have you kind of gotten in that rhythm of living in that sort of school year life? Because that's not where you spent your entire life prior to this, but it does kind of, life just starts over again in August. Has that been a challenge for you?
Well, it is a little bit different, but, you know, in South Building, we're probably a little bit less tied to the academic calendar maybe than some other parts of campus. Things stay pretty busy year-round. That said, it's exceptionally busy right now. Everyone's obviously really excited for the game on September 1st, but excited for all of our fall sports. Was at the game on Sunday, the women's soccer home opener, the 5-0 shutout of Siena. Excited about that team to begin their national championship defense. Field hockey is always a lot of fun. Hoping to get to a volleyball game this week. It's always a great time on campus, and especially for Tar Heel athletics.
What are a couple things right now that are important to you? What are some things that are on the top of your list right now that you're focusing on?
With respect to athletics? Or
just in general.
So what we say consistently is we're talked about as one of the best public universities in America. What if people said, instead of calling Carolina one of the best universities in America, they said, look, when it comes to higher ed in the United States, there's Carolina and then there's everybody else. We're head and shoulders the number one public university in America. I think that's a reasonable aspiration for us, and we're focusing on getting there with a number of key priorities. Everything happening around artificial intelligence, which is a significant challenge for us and all of our peers. Would like to add an engineering capability. You know, no one thinks of us as an engineering school, but we actually have some really strong programs in biomedical, in data science, a few others that have very strong enrollment, very strong employer demand for those graduates. So given the workforce demand in North Carolina and more broadly, would like to expand those programs and add to those engineering programs. Would like to continue to grow our enrollment. Everyone who lives in North Carolina knows how fast our state is growing. Our university hasn't grown very much. Every year we enroll a decreasing percentage of North Carolina's high school graduates, and that's going to continue to drop as the state grows and we stay flat. So we'd like to grow over time. Our plan is to add 5,000 students over the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. And as I say, we've got 500 additional on campus in the incoming first-year class. We also have a lot of work to do with the master plan for the campus, including everything happening out at Carolina North, a lot of buildings that need some attention. We just reopened Avery Dormitory here The renovation went extremely well. Bingham, which is a classroom building, just reopened on Tuesday, right on time, right on budget. Doesn't always happen. But those are the kind of things we need to stay focused on.
I did want to ask you about Carolina North. That seems to be something that you have been interested in the growth out there. Do you have a long-term vision for that area? And if so, is that something you'd be comfortable sharing with us?
I think we have a responsibility as stewards of the taxpayers' resources to use that incredible asset for the benefit of the state. It's about the same size as our existing campus, about 800 acres. It's right there on MLK, just below the intersection with Interstate 40, as you all know. And over time, we think it can be a full-blown satellite campus, a live, work, play, research, study environment with lab space, classroom space, office space, certainly living space for our undergraduate and graduate students, and also more generally for the town of Chapel Hill. Folks who live in Chapel Hill know that affordable housing is a significant challenge. That's a challenge for us as an employer. A lot of the folks moving to Chapel Hill are coming because somebody in their household is working for the university, and it's going to be hard to find a comprehensive solution to affordable housing in Chapel Hill without using the Carolina North location. And of course, there's been a lot of talk about putting athletic facilities there, and I think it's a natural place to consider when having that conversation.
You're talking about multiple things that would be like linchpin things in any chancellor's tenure. As you've tried to balance all these things and you're doing multiple of them at the same time, what have you learned about is the right way to approach those things in a university environment that maybe you might not have thought about 24 months ago that has kind of shaped your last couple?
Well, we haven't even gotten to athletics yet. Right?
Yeah, that's right. We're just talking university stuff.
Look, it's an environment that thrives on consensus. This is a university community, meaning there will always be a wide range of views about any topic. That's as it should be. And there's never going to be a unanimous view about anything, really. But I think the way you move forward is by building as much consensus as you possibly can. That takes more time than you might be used to when it comes to making decisions in a different context. But the flip side is that you have a much more durable solution when you get through that process of speaking to as many folks as possible and doing your best to get as much buy-in around our very diverse community as you can.
Well, let's talk a little athletics.
Yeah.
This is as volatile a time in college athletics as there has been. What can Carolina do to be ready for this volatile time and to be prepared for the future?
Obviously, an uncertain time in college athletics. I don't think anyone has really seen anything like it. And the challenge for us is that we can't keep doing things the same way that we've done historically. We have a phenomenal history and tradition in Tar Heel athletics, really unparalleled, I think, if you look across the country. And we're also competing at a higher level in more sports than really anybody else. When I talk about wanting to be number one nationally, head and shoulders the best, in athletics, in a lot of ways, we're already there. You have to look far and wide to find another athletics program that is fielding as many sports as successfully as we are. There's not a lot of places where winning multiple national championships in one academic year is considered normal, almost routine. So how do we stay tied to our best traditions while reacting effectively to these phenomenal changes that we see across the college athletics landscape? We have to continue to invest. We have to continue to raise our game, but we're starting from a position of remarkable strength.
Carolina athletics obviously gets talked about a lot and seems to be sort of this focal point of the college sports discussion now. What doesn't get talked about enough with Carolina athletics? What do you wish people were talking about more?
Well, I think we always wish people would give us more credit for the depth of our athletics program. When when we have the opportunity to win our 4th national championship in women's lacrosse, our 23rd national championship in women's soccer, with a first-time interim head coach, it almost becomes run-of-the-mill here in Chapel Hill. Most university athletic programs would give anything to have that kind of success, and it's become second nature here, and that's a good thing. But we shouldn't take it for granted. It's the result of our incredible coaching staff, remarkably hard work by all of our student athletes. That kind of continued success at the highest level doesn't come without an immense amount of hard work.
How do you keep that viable in an era when so much focus is on the financial reward, and the things you just mentioned don't have some of the financial rewards that other sports do?
Part of why we're investing so heavily in our football program. Football in the historic model has been able to support the cost of running most of these other sports. As the cost of running a football program has gone up with revenue share and other obligations, football can continue to support itself, but it's harder for football to support all of these other programs. And that's why we've been so focused on driving revenue, on finding new sponsorship and marketing opportunities. We've taken significant steps in that regard, bringing in Rick Bearcat as Chief Revenue Officer, Steve Newmark as the Deputy Associate Athletic Director, successor to Bubba Cunningham. Both of those guys have spent their careers driving revenue, maximizing revenue opportunities, and we and all of our peers are going to have to continue to be as aggressive and as creative as we possibly can on that front.
I want to talk football in just a second, but you mentioned Steve. I got a chance to speak with him for the first time a couple of days ago. He's someone that you have known previously. Mm-hmm. What should Tar Heel fans know about Steve Newmark, and why was he somebody who, when you were thinking and Carolina was thinking about this transition plan, why he was someone who came to mind?
Well, you're right. He's someone I've known for a while, and he's already hit the ground running. He just started a few days ago, but really unbeatable expertise in sponsorships and marketing and in media rights deals. Coming from running the Roush Fenway team in NASCAR, nobody has to be more aggressive about sponsorships and marketing than a NASCAR team. But he also ran that team on behalf of an ownership group that also owns the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Boston Red Sox, the Liverpool Football Club. So pretty broad-based sports management expertise across the board. On top of it, though, Jones, he grew up here in Chapel Hill and is a lifelong Tar Heel fan. So it's a pretty great combination.
Carolina, it's hard to believe. We're like 10 days away from the Tar Heels kicking off. Can you take us maybe a little bit through Bill Belichick and why Coach Belichick ended up being the right choice for Carolina football, and what this experiment has been like? Understanding we haven't kicked the ball off yet, but what this experiment has been like in your relationship with Coach?
Well, I'd say in a lot of ways the experiment, and I think that's the right word, has already been successful. If you just look at the excitement around Tar Heel football, I think you have to go back to the 1980 season.
That Bluebonnet Bowl.
And the Bluebonnet Bowl to match the level of enthusiasm that we see around Tar Heel football. The statistics about season ticket sales. We increased the prices by 25% and still sold them out earlier than we think we ever have. We also sold out all the single game tickets to Tar Heel football. It's been a long time since we did that before we played the first game. So Coach Belichick's arrival here, I think, has been tremendously successful so far. He's worked really hard to integrate himself into the life of the campus, the life of the Chapel Hill community. And I was with him yesterday at practice. I know he's excited about the season, and I think after all of the anticipation, ready to get out and actually play some football.
You mentioned him just kind of going through some old programs. Has that element, just his appreciation of the history of Carolina, has that taken you by surprise at all?
I really appreciate it, and I think everybody else does too. He has gone out of his way to reinvigorate the ties between the current program and its noble, proud history. We've been playing football here since 1888. We've been playing on that field in Kenan Stadium for 98 years. Obviously, Coach Belichick's father coached here, and he cares a lot about the history of the game and the history of our program. He's found all kinds of memorabilia that was just in storage and put it back on display. He's got Charlie Justice's jersey on display in his office. All kinds of stuff that hadn't seen the light of day in years now being displayed around the football building. There are mannequins right when you walk in, one with the Lawrence Taylor uniform and one with the Julius Peppers uniform, the historically accurate uniforms and helmets. Just a great thing, I think, for the alumni when they come back, whether they played football here or not, to see that direct lineage back to the terrific history of Tar Heel football.
You mentioned when we were talking about Carolina North, the potential for athletic venues and the discussion there. Obviously, as everyone knows, there has been a discussion about the future of where Carolina basketball is going to play. When you try to take all those, you said it's hard to find consensus. When you try to take all those different opinions in consideration, what are the things that are important in your mind when that decision does ultimately get made?
If there's consensus available about any topic here on campus, that's not the one.
It'd be hard to find one of them.
And, you go back to when the Smith Center was built, and we've done this, looked at the old DTH articles. When the Smith Center was built, people thought it was like going to the moon. Where we're sitting right now is next door to the Smith Center, and you can imagine what it looked like in the early 1980s, surrounded by parking lots. The South Campus here hadn't really been built, leaving Carmichael right there in the heart of campus. But now it's hard to believe we've played in the Smith Center almost twice as long as we played in Carmichael. I still meet alums regularly who remember the move into Carmichael from the tin can. So we have a responsibility to evaluate whether the Smith Center is the right long-term home for the next 50 years. And this discussion is really being forced upon us because to stay in the Smith Center, we have to spend an enormous amount of money, by which I mean $80 to $100 million just to fix the roof. Jeez. Y'all working there, that's not a 5 years from now decision. We have to put buckets out when it rains now. So before we spend that much money to fix the roof on a facility that's about to be 40 years old and has some other drawbacks compared to what you would see in a modern arena, let's step back and have the conversation about, should we just fix the roof? Should we try to do a comprehensive renovation of the existing facility, which would still have the constraints around ingress, egress, parking, the single concourse, the challenges everybody knows, no premium seating? Or do we build something new, and if so, where? That's not an inexpensive proposition, obviously, but we have a responsibility to make those decisions, those of us who are entrusted with leadership roles here at the university. In this case, what's going to be the home of Carolina basketball, hopefully for the next 50 years? What's the smartest decision we can make given all the considerations? We get a lot of feedback, as you might imagine.
I bet. A lot of people have strong opinions on that one.
What's the right timeline for that process?
We haven't made any decisions, but would certainly like to make an announcement by the end of the year.
I'm glad you're here because a couple really important issues that Jones and I have discussed on the pod before, as longtime pod listeners know. The thermostat in here is controlled somewhere else, and we have always speculated that the Chancellor's office has a button where, like, when you get mad at something Jones says, you're like, oh, we're going to raise it up a couple degrees over there.
I can't even control the temperature in my own office.
Look, there's some things even the Chancellor can't do, Adam.
The building I work in, South Building, it's a beautiful historic building. It was built in 1798. We're putting a new roof on now. Nobody was thinking about HVAC in 1798. I can promise you that.
Okay, so maybe that button's not in his office. I thought maybe that was something they showed you on your first day. Anytime you start a new job or any phase of life, there's that initial period where you're a little nervous and everything feels kind of weird. Does this feel more normal? Does it feel more like home?
Got to tell you, it's been about a year and a half now, just starting my fourth semester, so I guess that makes me a second semester sophomore. And I think that's about the time when you start to feel comfortable. Is sometime during your sophomore year, you start to feel like you've got things figured out. I don't think you ever have everything figured out in a role like this, but people have been so exceptionally warm and welcoming and hospitable, and that makes it a lot easier to get up to speed. The challenge is, we've got 44,000 students, faculty, and staff. You're never going to meet everybody, no matter how hard you try. So I try to spend an awful lot of time getting around campus, getting around the community, meeting as many folks as possible. But it's always going to be a fraction of the folks out there.
What do you like to do, like when you do have a weekend or something? What do you like to do to just relax? Or is that just not capable at this moment in time in your career?
I spend my time watching Tar Heel sports and listening to podcasts.
There we go. That sounds perfect. What more could you need, honestly? Sounds like a perfect life.
Did you ride your bike across the state of North Carolina?
I did. It was a little while ago now. It was in 2012, but me and two other guys rode our bike 500 miles in 4 days across the state from Murphy to Beaufort. I don't recommend this, by the way.
Don't worry, I wasn't going to do it.
5 days would have made a little bit more sense, but 125 miles average per day. You're just racing sun up to sundown the whole time. But it was a lot of fun. Saw parts of the state you wouldn't otherwise see. Learned a lot about the state, in particular how wide it is. But I'm not sure I could do it right now.
Why did you do that?
It was really just, I should make clear, we did not do it for any benevolent reason. We didn't raise money for any particularly worthy cause. We just thought it was going to be a fun thing to do, and we trained for it. It required some training, and just decided to get it done.
Guys, one day I can talk about this on a podcast with
Right.
two good-looking guys.
It was good planning.
That's why we should do this. What is next in your mind? And we'll get you. We've already kept you longer than we said we were going to, so thank you. What is next for you? What do you think is important? What are some of the things that you're looking at as far as the next steps that are important to you?
Look, I think the responsibility that I have, and that everyone who's honored to help lead this university has, is what do we do about this era of very rapid change? Certainly in athletics, but really more broadly, all the changes coming out of Washington, the challenges presented by artificial intelligence, which are, I think, going to fundamentally reshape higher education. How do we make sure that this university, which is not only the crown jewel of North Carolina, but one of the most important public institutions in America, starting our 232nd academic year, how do we make sure that we continue to lead? How do we adapt sufficiently so that we maintain our historic leadership position while remaining tied to the remarkable history and tradition that makes this place great?